Okay, I think it is recording now. All right, how's everyone doing? Woo! Woo! So I just want to take a few bites. But welcome back. Another Lunch and Learn going down. We're going to do Meteor and React today. I don't know if you guys, anyone used either of these two JavaScript stacks before?
Yep.
Show of hands. Nobody.
React.
React.
Used, do you mean as an end user or?
You've all definitely used these as an end user. You've definitely used these. I mean, developed, played with, even for a few minutes. So just two. Cool. So get a lot of new exposure here.
What is some stuff that's using it?
Well, wouldn't you know it, we're going to hit a slide on that very shortly. So, as you all know, I'm an iOS developer now with the iOS team. I have very little or no experience with JavaScript in the past. So this was a cool opportunity for me to kind of learn JavaScript, kind of figure out the whole JavaScript scene going on right now with all these frameworks popping up. It seems like every 5 minutes a new JavaScript library is kind of being created. So it's very overwhelming for a newbie coming in trying to figure out, okay, if I want to make a web app, what's the best JavaScript library, or what one will suit my project? So in my investigation and trials and errors, I found this thing called Meteor, which we will deep dive into today, which seems to be this like isomorphic JavaScript framework that just takes care of a lot of things. And it doesn't try to replace Angular React, it uses Angular and React, well, either or. So it's a very cool framework, has a lot of funding getting pumped into it, and they're trying to make it like the next big, the JavaScript framework that rules them all is what they call it, that little tagline. So we'll kind of dive into what that means. This isn't a deep dive into React, this isn't a deep dive into JavaScript. I'm not the right teacher for that. I barely know any JavaScript at all. So what we're going to be doing is building a very simple app today, deploying it to Heroku, deploying it to phone, and doing all that in about 30 minutes to show you how quick you can get a prototype out. That's the point of today, and show you kind of what Meteor does for you and what Meteor does not do for you, and what it excels in and what it kind of falls in. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about a little bit about Lunch and Learn status, what's going on, who's next, what's happened already. We'll go a little bit into the state of web development right now, do a little Meteor overview, and then a little live coding example with Meteor leveraging React. And then a Q&A. Please don't ask me too many JavaScript questions because I will not be able to answer them for you. But luckily we have some of our web experts in here who can, and they'll probably point out some shitty JavaScript code I've written. So Lunch and Learn, let's kind of talk about this. We're looking for presenters. This is a great opportunity to learn stuff, present stuff, work on your presentation skills, master a new thing. Like I said, I know nothing about JavaScript, and I'm doing basically a Lunch and Learn on JavaScript today. So there's no need to be an expert in something, just something you're passionate about, and it'll give you a little ass kicking to actually do it. You know, if you're lazy like me and you get home and all you want to do is go out or play video games, this will actually get you to focus on some shit during the weekend. Because, I have to present on Monday. Maybe I should actually do something productive this weekend. So this is a good way to kind of get you to learn something new. It doesn't have to be technical. It doesn't have to be a live coding thing. It could be anything. Quantum computing, big data, it could be a presentation on marketing, how to leverage your app for success. You know, anything that will get us to think big, think differently. This whole thing is better when everybody participates, so we can get kind of different viewpoints and aspects on different parts of technology. And, you know, it's better when we participate as a team, kind of, you know, teamwork. So I've heard, but I'm not an expert. I'm proving, you know, kind of my goal today was to take all of the, not excuses, but reasons people would give for not wanting to present and doing those this week. So I'm not an expert in JavaScript. I've used Meteor for all 4 hours, and I'm going to present to you today how to deploy an app to Heroku and mobile. I don't have enough time. I did this whole presentation in 3 hours. So if you have 3 hours to spare and 3 weeks to do it, I think you could squeeze it in. If you're even crafty enough, you could get it done entirely at work. It's a good opportunity to learn something new. We kind of already discussed that. And instead of doing like one long 45 to an hour minute talk, we could do like 2 lightning talks in one session. Maybe someone gives a 15-20 minute presentation and another person gives a 15-20 minute presentation. You know, it's up to you guys. It's going to be a democracy here. It's not what I want, it's what we want, right? So always looking for suggestions. Email me. I'll send out some surveys to see what works, what doesn't work. You know, let's make this fun for everybody, not just for me. I want everybody here to benefit and enjoy, you know, lunch and learns on Mondays. So some potential topics to talk about if you guys need some inspiration. These are my personal topics of interest, but obviously whatever interests you, I'm sure would pique everybody else's as well. Big data, image recognition, big pushes for this, especially Google just released some, not open source, but available image recognition software. We're going to be using a lot of image recognition tech from what I hear in the pipeline for Jibjab messages and facial recognition. So that would be very cool for us to all learn about. Lean startup, if anyone in here has experience with lean startups, what it takes to fail, what it takes to succeed, I'd love to hear more about that. Marketing, if anyone has some marketing background, how to get your app to survive and thrive in the wild. It's very difficult. You could build the best app in the world with the best frameworks, but if you can't market it and you can't advertise it, there's a good chance it's not going to go anywhere unless you get lucky and you get this big word-of-mouth explosion. I think, Airbnb was released how many times? 3 times? Snapchat had a different name before Snapchat came out. It is what it is today. So there is ways, there are things that those companies did to get their name out there. It wasn't just like a first hit, boom. So there's things to be learned in that aspect. Building an iOS Android app, there's only a few iOS experts in here. I'm not even one of them. I'm pretty new to iOS as well. So I know if someone did build an iOS or Android app, I think 80% of this audience would find that to be a completely new thing. And maybe the iOS team would learn something new as well. Who knows? Philosophy, just a philosophical conversation. Why apps like Facebook take over apps like MySpace. And that's happened with several different apps that we know of today and use today. Design, creating effective UI frameworks, things to avoid. Your app's not going to get anywhere if it doesn't have a nice, pretty UI, and it's not easy to use. We all know that. We've used shitty apps. We've used really good apps. All right, so some stats on Lunch and Learns. I want to just kind of show who's done Lunch and Learns, who has yet to do Lunch and Learns, and let's pressure those guys who haven't done any to do some. So this is going to be like a team ratio, and in parentheses we'll do like the total done. So the iOS team, good job guys. We've had 4 out of our 5 team members present. This is our 5th presentation with me today. Web team, you guys are slacking. You guys got 8 team members, only 2 of you have presented. And if I lost count, I'm sorry. I'm not good at math. Storybots Web, Jibjab Web, combined you all into one. Same with iOS. Gustavo and Will are included. Platform Ops. There he is back there. I know he's done one. PMs. Boo. QA. Boo. All right. So let's get to lunch. I know this is what you guys all are really here for. You don't give a shit about Meteor. You don't care about JavaScript. You're here for the food, right? So what do we want to eat? So I sent out a survey a couple weeks ago. These are the results. Luckily, good food falls under all of that. So thank you for the 3 of you that submitted good food. Really helping us out.
There's definitely things in all those other categories that aren't part of good food.
Yes. So it looks like, according to this, we're probably going to do subs next time, either base cities or something else. I'm going to see what Mimi can do for us. If you have any suggestions, please fill out that form. It's the only way I'm going to know. Or tell me directly. I'd rather just fill out the form so I have everything in one place. I don't have to scatter through a bunch of emails and IMs. So this is what we're looking like right now. So we'll probably hit subs next week. Looks like everything else is pretty much even. Or maybe we'll do good food the week after that. So we'll see. All right, so let's kind of dive into the state of web development as a whole. I'm not an expert in web development. I did web development at my previous company. Did .NET, which is a Windows stack. Joseph did .NET as well, and is even doing a little .NET now as we speak. Am I right? In Elasticsearch.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. Right back to where you started. Full circle. Circle of life. All right. So let's kind of go over some, if you were to build a web app right now, what are some web stacks you could use, and why would you want to use one of these? So we have, there's literally hundreds out there, and that's not even like an exaggeration. There are literally hundreds of different web stacks and different technologies you can use. So when you're coming in for the first time, it's extremely overwhelming. What do I use? Why would I use this over the other thing? Is Windows better for this? Is Linux better for this? Is Rails better for this? What should I use? Should I use a JavaScript stack? What should I use? So we have WISA, which is Windows, IIS, SQL, and ASP.NET. These are classically used for big enterprise software, require a lot of licenses, usually very expensive to maintain. So startups and smaller companies tend to kind of stay away from this stack. So you might encounter this stack at bigger companies such as Cornerstone, where I worked previously. So big enterprise companies usually doing B2B models. We have Ruby on Rails. We use that here. This is used by companies of all sizes, from startup all the way up to enterprise as well. But that's an existing tech stack. We have a lot of experts on Rails in this room right now. We have LAMP stacks, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. Some people replace PHP with Python. It's the classic Linux stack, which is typically free. You can just download a Linux OS, put Linux on a server somewhere, and boom, you're up and running. No Windows licenses, no SQL licenses, because I don't know if any of you know this, but SQL licenses are extremely expensive. But I'm assuming you get a lot of Microsoft support from that. I don't know.
Costs more money too.
Yeah, it costs more money. I prefer LAMP. But now what's been happening lately is there's been this big push towards JavaScript stacks. And unless you've been living under a rock the past 4 or 5 years, you know all about this. There's Node.js that has come out, which is moving JavaScript from exclusively on the client, aka your browser, to the server. So with Node.js, it's now possible to write an entire web application in one language, which that being JavaScript. Not counting HTML and CSS, you're going to need some of that as well. But now it's possible to write an entire stack, top to bottom and middle, in entirely JavaScript. And that's typically done, you can kind of mix and mash a bunch of technologies together, like Node with Ember, or this with that. But popular ones right now are Mean, which is Mongo, pairing Express and Angular, and Node as your backend. Meteor, which kind of takes Mean and adds a whole bunch of other crap onto it. And then other things, Ember. So this is kind of what I think Stack Overflow, this is from Stack Overflow, did a survey in 2015, last year, about who's using what. So this, I don't know if these numbers add up to 100, so I don't know what these percentages actually mean. But this is basically the chart that came from there. Swift is somewhere in here, and there was another image that showed Swift is actually the most desired language right now. But I guess it just wasn't on this survey. You can kind of pair Objective-C with that for now. So we have JavaScript at the top. That's because it's classically been used for all front-end stuff. Big front-end web pushes now to make front-end apps very rich, just as rich as mobile and native apps on computer. SQL is obviously very big. You have enterprise is taking up so much space right now. Big enterprise is all using SQL. Maybe MySQL is including that. I don't know. Java is still the most popular server out there today. So Java's really big. And of course, you have Android using Java as well. So both of those kind of falling under that. C# in the ASP.NET world. So that's why you're seeing that very close to the SQL numbers. PHP still very big. Python has been kind of doing this, but it's on the rise right now. C++ is always going to be around as long as there's video games and native Windows apps, Linux apps. C is always going to be around. You have Node and Angular kind of have been exploding recently. Ruby's still there. It looks like Angular and Node are kind of passing Ruby at the moment. Ruby's not when people show you the chart of like mean versus Ruby, it's like Ruby's going up, constantly, and mean has been kind of exponentially growing over the past couple of years with this demand for JavaScript styles on Objective-C. So kind of what we just talked about. But Angular is losing a little bit of steam, and people are kind of migrating over to React, which I'll kind of explain why I chose React over Angular later. Java is still #1. It is the frequently most used tag on Stack Overflow, and C's are continuing to hold strong. So I kind of messed that up a little bit, I guess, but JavaScript ruling the web, some JavaScript stuff. Angular, you can use React with Flux, you can use Node, Ember, Knockout, Backbone, Meteor, Mithril, Ember, no framework, you can just use a lot of libraries. Vue, Breeze, Reactive, or Ractive, whatever the hell that's called, Ractive. So someone like me coming in off of mobile or off of C++, like what I used to do, or .NET, and you're coming in and you're like, all right, I want to get modern now. I want to build a new app from the ground up. What the hell do I use? And you go online, and you go, JavaScript framework. This is basically what Google returns to you. All of this crap. And you'll go on any website, and you'll have experts in Angular saying all these other ones suck. And then you'll have experts in Ember saying all these other ones suck. And everyone is convinced that the framework they're using is the best. So which one is it? Who the hell knows? And then you get these memes, like a new JavaScript framework is coming. I know you created a new one that will find you and kill you. Okay, so today we're going to go over Meteor, which is, so for someone new coming in, doesn't want to kind of do a whole thing on your own, Meteor gives you kind of this is kind of like a good analogy here, where mean stack kind of gives you all the parts, and you have to kind of assemble them the way you want, and it gives you a lot of parts, full customizability, where Meteor kind of gives you the car, and you don't have so much customizability, but you have a car. You can actually start driving right away. So this is what Meteor is. It's a free and open source JavaScript web framework written using Node. Meteor allows for rapid prototyping and produces cross-platform web, Android, iOS code. Built it. It uses Cordova, which has its advantages and disadvantages, but that's what it's using, and it gives you that potential to prototype at a rapid speed, where you could have a phone application for both operating systems of Android and iOS, as well as a web app in under 30 minutes. I mean, it's pretty hard to beat that. Obviously, that's going to come with some of the disadvantages. It's not a silver bullet, and we'll go over that later. It's extremely easy to learn for a lot of different reasons. We'll go over that later. It doesn't compete with Angular React. It uses Angular and React, kind of the two biggest web stacks, front-end and VVM stacks out there. And I think it's working on implementing like Ember and other things as well. Don't quote me on that. So what Meteor is, it's mean stack plus socket.io. Uses grunt gulp, which you're familiar with if you've used Angular and mean before. Cordova, which is the framework used to deploy web apps to mobile. Hot code reload, which we'll see that in action. I don't know if you guys have worked with hot code reload, but it's a pretty cool thing. And a lot more. And it has thousands upon thousands of packages you could download and install. This is kind of what the stack looks like. Blaze is Meteor's own kind of Angular React thing, which is kind of not really used. So people tend to go one of these routes when using Meteor. Plus, if you use one of these, you're staying relevant. Worst case, you become a good Angular developer, which is not a bad thing in today's tech world. You have this client data cache, which is basically a local copy of the server's database. So when you're developing a Meteor, you can basically pretend that your database is sitting inside your browser. There's no concept of contacting a node server, doing API calls. Much like Brad showed us with Parse, you're kind of just pretending that everything is sitting right on your client, and a lot of this framework is taking care of the API callbacks in the background for you using this DDP, which we'll go over later. Live query is something that was introduced in 1.3, which is Meteor's most recent version. Literally was released like 2 weeks ago, so I had to make this app work for 1.3. That was basically what I was doing this weekend, was making this to-do app work with 1.3. And then you have your microservices, and live query is a way to kind of adjust what Meteor is providing for you by default. If you're trying to scale very big or just optimize some queries, it now gives you the option to do that instead of Meteor's default querying language. So why is this easy to learn? It's built with learnability in mind. It was built by people who wanted this thing to be easy. Like that was their goal. Is I want this to be easy for new developers to come and learn. It's entirely JavaScript top to bottom. So you just have to basically learn one language, JavaScript. And kind of like what we were discussing earlier, it has the same Mongo, and it's using Mongo, which is a NoSQL database, interface on the client as well as the server. So there's no need to learn some new model code, and it's using this in-memory mini Mongo instance. So it's basically like an instance of the database sitting on your browser, in your browser's memory, and you're totally talking to the browser cache of the database. You're not contacting the server at all, and Meteor is doing all of that synchronization in the background for you. So kind of let's go into a little bit of details about Meteor here. It's real-time built into its core, so it handles all the real-time components. So as soon as you update something in your database or you update something on the front end, it automatically alerts all users at the same time. And we'll see that in this to-do app when we kind of put entries into the back end. It'll update all the clients, the phone, the web, all simultaneously. So that's pretty cool, and that's really good for like chat apps, for example, in a chat room. Full stack reactivity, real-time is default. So to get this to work in Rails or other stacks, it requires a lot of setup, Ajax calls, this, that, and the other thing, where Meteor kind of just gives all of this to you right up front. It has this built-in build system, because Meteor believes we spend too much time packaging our applications together, downloading this dependency, getting that dependency, this library. So you don't have to fiddle with any of this stuff. Meteor just kind of gives you like 90% of what you'll need when you just write Meteor create. It gives you just everything you need. And anything else you need, if you want it to be a Node package, an Angular package, or a Meteor package, you can just use npm Node Package Manager to kind of get that for you. It's great for single-page apps and mobile, which is kind of the growing trend nowadays. Is single-page apps is huge. Package managing is managed through his atmosphere.js, which is it's a very good site for seeing packages, which packages are trending, which packages are most frequently downloaded, as well as feedback in terms of comments and ratings for which package is good. So it's a pretty good site for managing packages. You can also use just npm or Cordova's package manager as well. So kind of going more into this DDP thing, it's distributed data protocol. And it's basically the protocol, you can think of it as like REST APIs over WebSockets. So you have that constant WebSocket connection, and REST API calls are just going back and forth. And Meteor is doing all that for you and synchronizing everything. It's isomorphic, so you have same code on client as you do on the server, and that's using that DDP mini Mongo. So there's no concept of writing like Node server code. You can, but there's no need to when you're writing simple, prototypes. And you write once, deploy everywhere. So that's very powerful for a new developer that kind of, you want to test an idea out. You don't want to build this whole stack from the ground up. You just want to see, is an idea even viable? This is where you can do it. So Meteor also gives you testing. So Jeremy's not here, but he'd be very happy to hear that. So it gives you full testing frameworks using Velocity. Integrates with Jasmine and Selenium, which are some front-end testing frameworks. And you can rerun these tests as frequently as just saving the code or deploying. Those are kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum. As frequently as you like, up to as frequently as saving your code. Debugging, you have full support in WebStorm. So WebStorm is basically built into their, I forget what is it called, WebStorm? Yeah, by JetBrains. Full support for debugging Meteor code, as well as you have your browser. Routing, you're using Iron Router here, which is a routing mechanism for Meteor. Security, it comes with some security baked in, but you have to keep in mind some security principles. It auto-escapes HTML for you, doesn't use session cookies, so you're not going to get cross-site request forgery or cookie toss attacks, and you have full DB encryption on your Mongo instance, which is nice. Packages, you get any mean packages you want, which is, I think, over 100,000. From all the way from Express, Angular, Node, and Mongo packages you can download themselves, as well as React packages, and over 4,000 Meteor packages. So this is all cool and all, but is this just the next hipster stack where it's gonna fade off in a couple months, or is it like here to stay? So as you can see on the bottom, a lot of packages, a lot of professional service providers, over 20,000 Stack Overflow questions. So there's people using it, people asking questions about it. Over 500,000 unique installs, and 46 upcoming events. So there's some demand for it. It doesn't replace the best JavaScript frameworks. It works with them. There's more Stack Overflow questions about Meteor than mean. Not mean in terms of Angular, but mean as like the mean stack. So there's probably more questions about Angular, but as the mean stack itself, as a cohesive unit, there's more questions about Meteor. They recently raised $20 million to build the stack that rules them all. So there are people out there who believe Meteor has a lot of potential. $20 million worth of potential is not a small number by any means. So who uses it? So we'll kind of look at who uses this right now. So we have WorkPop, and these guys, as Joe knows, worked right on the 4th floor at my old building, Cornerstone. These guys were in the Cornerstone Accelerator, and their website is fully in Meteor. So this is much like any job board app, I guess you could say. So this is just like their front end page here, but obviously it's a full interactive app where you can go search for jobs, apply to jobs, etc. Meteor.com, I don't need to show you that website, you can go look at that yourself. This website called Bit Casino, which is literally a casino for Bitcoins. So it was just a matter of time before this was made. But here it is, so actually gaming and multimedia all over the place. This was built in Meteor. And one of Meteor's actual case studies is what's like called code fights, where you kind of like battle another person in terms of solving a question first. Like whoever can solve it first and better wins the code fight, and you get scores, kind of like the code wars that we do here. But I think it's more like player versus player instead of like sitting on your own doing it. And these guys literally just migrated their PHP over to Meteor. So you can kind of see it. It is possible to migrate from existing web stacks to Meteor, and there is a use case for it. So kind of this is just a little peek into their thing. You can go check these websites out later if you'd like. Feel free. Let's kind of kill these. So it's not a silver bullet, as we kind of talked about before. So when should we not use Meteor? If you already have most of your app written in mean, like 90% of it, there's really no reason to move to Meteor at this point. You've basically hooked up the car already, kind of that picture we looked at earlier. So there's really no reason to do it unless you really just can't finish your app or something. Usually, once you grow to a certain size of Meteor, you'll move to mean to get full customizability. If you're only building a web service REST API and don't need client functionality, that's not really what Meteor's for. Meteor gives you that client-server platform. If you really don't need a web app to be real-time, if it's just a static page, Meteor's not giving. I mean, it's there for you, but the big thing of Meteor is that real-time feedback, like a chatter app or something like that. When it's more important to deliver the first page extremely fast rather than be able to prototype very fast. So like an example, a static front page. If you need to scale to millions of users right now, it might not be the best app for you. Maybe Mean or Rails or something else is more up your alley, or maybe a LAMP stack if you need millions and millions of users scale. What Meteor is for is to get you to that point, is to take you from 0 to 100,000. Because then once you have 100,000 users, you can throw money at the problem. You're like, all right, I can't scale much more with Meteor, even though they're giving you capabilities with those live queries. Okay, well now I have funding and I have public attention. I'm going to hire some Node developers, or I'm going to hire some Rails developers to migrate this over. So this is to get you to that point, whereas before you might not be able to get there as fast or as easily using this stuff. So some more information, I can provide these links to you guys later, but some good tutorials. Reddit's great. always a great source, but you have to kind of read in between the lines and Reddit a lot. There's good stuff there and there's bad stuff. DiscoverMeteor.com and Facebook's React tutorial is very good if you want to learn about just React, not just Meteor React. All right, so let's get to it. Let's create an app. What are we at? We got like 30 minutes. Let's create an app. Let's put it on GitHub. Let's host it on Heroku, and let's deploy it to mobile in 30 minutes. Let's see if we can do that. So we got nothing here. So I have, I made this app already. It was called Simple To Do's React. So if I mess up code, I have a backup plan. So I don't have nothing. Because there's a good chance I will jack up some code here while we make this. It's inevitable when you do a presentation to mess code up while you're writing. Okay, so all this takes is you basically go to Meteor's website and you install the Meteor package. And that takes all of about 5 minutes. So I wanted to skip that part because anybody could do that. That's not hard to do. So to create an app from nothing, basically just do Meteor, create, what do we want to call this? Lunch to do? Call it lunch to do. And let me know if this is too small for anybody. You don't really need to see the command, the terminal, but maybe the actual code we're writing. Okay, so we have this here. Let's change directory into it. And let's kind of see what happened here. So let's open this project. Of course, this is being difficult. It's over. Open. For some reason, my menu does not come up when the actual window's over here, so I have to move it. Well, let's see what it created here. So we have this client folder. We have a server folder. We have a .meteor, which is basically Meteor's files that it needs. Don't really need to touch those unless you're getting like super advanced stuff, but definitely not for this. So you have like your main JavaScript file, which is your JavaScript entry point. Can everyone see that okay? Okay. So this is just what it creates by default. You have your main HTML, which is like if you're on anything else, it's like your index HTML. It's just your entry point for HTML here. You have your CSS. Everyone knows what CSS is. And that's basically all we need to see for this. And we also have some server code, which basically we just put in some startup code that we want, but right now we have nothing. So let's see what this looks like. Oh, where'd you go? Okay. So we're here. So usually what you want to do here first is get Node package manager ready to go so you can actually install some packages. And then you just type Meteor to start a server on localhost 3000, port 3000. So this starts a local MongoDB. This basically starts a server up for you, spins up a server. Hopefully this goes quicker. Okay, cool. So now we can run this here. And we have this. So welcome to Meteor. This is basically what it just gives you out of the box. If you've done like a Rails scaffolding, you get like something similar out of the box for Rails. Just very simple. Click the button X times and it goes away. There's no like persistent state here. It'll go away. And it gives you some links here. So let's actually like turn this into our web app. All right. So let's go into main HTML. Let's kind of just replace this with some just generic code here. So what have we done here? We just made a div. We just given it a title called to-do list. And as you can see, the hot reload has happened over here. The page is gone. I didn't click refresh. I didn't do anything. It is automatically just, it's called hot reload or something like that. It's a weird name, but it is what it is. So this is the div's looking for some ID called render target that doesn't exist yet, so there's really nothing to display. Okay. Oh, first I forgot we need to actually put React on here. So it doesn't come with React built in. You need to just install the React package, because usually Meteor uses its thing called Blaze. If you want to use Angular, you want to use React, you just have to do a simple install. So we'll do React, and we'll do React DOM. So this is going to give us the ability to use React. Looks like we're done. So if you've used React before, you should know that you don't use .js files, you use .jsx files, which is basically React's own version of JavaScript that compiles down into JavaScript. And the big thing of React is you're basically putting in HTML inside of your JavaScript files. And there's a lot of debate on that online. Is that good? Is that bad? That's just the way it is. Some people love it, some people hate it. So the people that hate it tend to go to Angular or something else. People that love it stay here. But I don't mind it. I think it's okay. It makes it a little more clear as to what's actually happening, because you call functions called render, and render just returns blocks of HTML to your HTML container. Makes it very simple. You're just kind of substituting stuff inside of your embedded HTML. It makes it pretty easy to follow. So first, what we need to do is delete this main.js, because we don't need this. Main.js doesn't do anything for us here. We need the JSX file. Yes. Get rid of it. Okay, so let's make a new file. Oh, please don't do this to me. Okay, good. So we're going to save this in client. We're going to call this, notice the JSX extension here. Traditionally, in a lot of text editors, Sublime, I know, has this issue, and Atom, I'm using Atom as well. It will not render, or at least syntax color, JSX files correctly. It gets very confused when you start putting HTML in your JavaScript file. So you're probably going to need to install something like Babel, like a Babel package, or some sort of React package to get it to actually render and color code JSX files correctly. So let's kind of put in some code here, and I'll go over what this code means. And remember, I'm not an expert here. So we're importing React. That's very simple. That's just to use the React framework. And we're also importing custom frameworks here, such as Meteor and Render. And we're going to use app, which doesn't exist yet. And basically what this says on startup, render this app tag, and we don't know what app is yet. But what we're going to do is find element ID, render target, and put app in that. And where does that exist? We saw that here, render target. So it's going to find this and insert basically app. And what is app? We're going to define that right now. So we're going to call this app. So over here, we're going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this imports. And then in here, we're going to make a new folder called UI. And then here, we're going to save app.jsx. So now we're basically defining what that app tag means. What is that app tag? I'm going to copy in app here. Okay, so what happened here? Basically, the way React kind of works in the most basic sense of the word is when you have an app HTML tag, it's going to call render on the app JSX file. And what's it going to do? It's going to return this stuff for you. It's going to call this.render tasks. It's going to do something, but as you can see, there is a task tag, which we haven't defined yet, which is why the app is not working right now. So we need to define what a task actually is. And to call getTask is a simple, and we have this static data for getTasks right now. So this will make sense as soon as we kind of put our task class in. So imports UI. And boom, the hot reload happened on the left. You can see I didn't touch refresh or anything. It just kind of automatically pushed all the updates to localhost, refreshed it for me. And we could now see all of these parts playing together. So what happened here? And kind of just an extension of what we see, what I explained already. We have this div with just an ID render target. That's all it knows. And then in main JSX, we're saying on startup, find render target and put an app tag in there. And it says, okay, well, what is app? So we call app and we do render. Render has all of this. It's a class name container, has a header h1 of to-do list, which you can see there, the h1 tag, and then a table of kind of this.render tasks. And what's this.render tasks? It returns this HTML, which is a task. And what is task? It calls render and returns list items. So quick thing about React, every subclass of React, of a view class, is a subclass of a component, and prop types and props are things that are passed from the parent component down to the children. There's a lot, you can go into a lot more detail about that. That's outside the scope of this tutorial here, but it goes into great detail in like Facebook's React tutorials as to how component props are kind of communicating with one another with its child view classes, such as this. So this is just a static class right now. Anyone lost so far? It makes sense?
That's a good question.
Yes.
When you say inserting like app and task tags, is it inserting like that tag itself or like the code that's rendered in the tag?
It's like replacing it with the code that's in the render block. And Meteor's kind of doing all of that before it gives it to the client.
So the final thing, like you inspect this browser right now, and you end up with.
It's not going to look exactly like that. It'll look very close. Like you're not going to see the app tag and the task tag. You're going to see like the actual HTML. Where is it here again? It's like more tools developed. It's some weird shortcut on Mac.
Shift menu.
Where is this? Yeah. So this is why you don't use Meteor for static pages, as we kind of went over earlier. It's doing too much for you for a static page. Yeah, like I said, I don't know for sure, but I could tell you this starts to make a little more sense when you start actually doing stuff. And then you can see your minified JS here, which is where you'll do some of your debugging. But usually I would not debug here. I would debug like in a WebStorm debugger or something. So let's kind of close this up a little bit. Get rid of you. Okay, so let's move along here, see if there's anything here I need to tell you guys. I don't think so. Oh, so what we can do now is add some CSS, make this a little prettier. I'm not going to do any crazy CSS, just very basic CSS here. And you can kind of see the hot reload in action again, which is probably my favorite feature of this Meteor stuff is just boom, like live. If you want to move things over a couple pixels to the right a couple pixels, this could probably really get really nice when you're doing some nice UI or hard UI work. But I'm not a UI CSS JavaScript guy, so I don't know yet, but I'm fooling around with this more and more at home. All right, so let's start making this, let's start using like MongoDB a little bit, and let's start actually getting this going here and making this like a real app. So we're going to make a new class called tasks, and we're going to make this part of our like API. It's not really an API because just Meteor's using it, but you can publicly expose this if you want. So imports, make an API folder. I'm going to call this is an actual JavaScript file. This is not React, so we can do this as just a JS file. So what we're doing now is not React. We're not doing any front-end stuff here. We're doing actual Mongo stuff here. So what we're doing here is we're importing Mongo, and we're using Meteor's kind of wrapper of Mongo. It's still Mongo, it's just Meteor does a couple tweaks to it to make it play nice. And we have this concept of tasks, which is a new Mongo collection. So if you've used Mongo before, it's a document store. It's not there's no schema. It's not SQL. It's not pSQL. It's not regular SQL or MySQL. It's NoSQL, which is a very different mentality in terms of storing data from typical SQL databases. All right, so in server main, let's do this. So we're going to import tasks here. So basically the file we just wrote. Let me just make sure this is okay here. Okay. We can get rid of everything else. We don't need startup code right now. We're going to put some startup code in later. And we don't need this. All we need to know about is this concept of tasks. And all this is doing is just it's loading on the server stuff we put on the client. So what we need to do now is import a few packages to use this Mongo stuff and reactive data in React. npm, so we're using npm. So this is React add-ons pure render mix-in. I don't really know what this does, but the tutorial wants me to add it, so I will do that. And my projects that I've done have required this as well. So sorry, I can't give you much insight on what this is doing. But I can tell you what this is doing, and this is actually letting you, it's downloading packages to have React be able to use that local Mongo cache that's sitting in your browser. That's what this is doing here. So as you can kind of see, this kind of refreshes every time we either add packages or kind of like any file changes or is added to the project. So you'll see the screen flash a little bit. So what we're going to do now is kind of add this stuff in so we can start using it. So where would we want to do that? We put it in our, our main app file here. So let's replace this React import with a more detailed one. It's going to use not just component but prop types as well. And again, you can go into more detail on that on an actual React tutorial. This is kind of doing everything. What we can do now is we get rid of this. Let's see if I can remember what happens here. Render tasks, yeah. Let's get rid of this. So we're just creating this class app, which extends component. And again, that's that parent class. We have this new definition of render tasks. So we can get rid of this. And this is now going to return tasks.map, which basically pulls tasks out of the DB instance and maps them to this task instance.
Is that like map like you need? Is this like map like how we do it in Swift?
Like Swift a little bit. It's a little different. It's kind of like a data bind almost.
All right, so it's more database specific. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Think more data bind instead of mapping like something on like a closure onto something or a function onto something. And kind of just putting in some things for prop types here, basically just saying that tasks is required, and just to create container basically just says find it and fetch it. So this is just specifics for how we kind of call what we do with tasks. Basically that they're required, and the concept of task is just finding them and fetching them. All right, so now what we can do here, save this. Nothing happened. I was expecting this to go away. What happened?
What is the errors and stuff?
The errors?
Yeah, like when
I don't-
had no task defined when we were following it.
So I don't have a linter on right now, so you're not going to see like syntax errors, but you will see this stuff down here
Oh, that.
in the actual. So there you can see it's red, so there is some error right now. So I just don't remember what it is, but I can.
Your application has errors.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Figure it out.
Oh, unexpected token? I don't know how helpful these are.
I had this error yesterday too. I just need to remember what I did.
What was unexpected token?
Isn't it
It
right?
has a token, but it wasn't expected.
Yeah, it was not expected.
12.5. Something here.
What was it? It's somewhere else.
Extra friendly.
Oh, I see. I don't have like I don't have what it is.
Unexpected.
It's returning nothing. So let's make it return something. So I'm hoping that to-do list goes away because nothing should be in the database as soon as this Meteor server restarts. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Cool. So now it's actually loading from the DB instance using task ID and using task. And then we're going to kind of define how to pull tasks out of the database next. So right now there's nothing there. So let's put stuff in the database right now. So we can kind of, so this is showing you, so let's say someone else, let's say there's like a chat app and someone put in like a chat. So let's start Meteor Mongo. So this is actually loading up Mongo right now. And let's just put stuff in the database and pretend this was like an API call from somebody else. So boom, you can see the thing is right there right now. So we could put 3 in there. They pop right up. And that's all because this is over WebSocket right now. So this is very quick. Cool. So we can, just do very basic extensions of this. We could let's put a form in there to actually add tasks on the front end. So inside of container, inside the header, back. Okay. So we have so basically what we're doing here now is we're adding a form, and on submit we have this function called handle submit, which we haven't defined yet, so therefore we have errors over here. And this reference here, text input, is so we can reference, that's a React thing, and so we can reference this part of the DOM from anywhere in React code by just basically using text input. So you could put any reference you want here. So right now, let's kind of import React DOM first, because we're going to need, in order to use that reference, we need to actually use React DOM. And let's actually make a handle submit event function, sorry. We'll put that right above render tasks here. Let's clean this code up a little bit. Okay, so now we can actually create new tasks here with this form. And all this does is, find the DOM node, which uses that text input refs. So this is that refs thing, and put it with this. Or you can do a tasks.insert, capital T tasks, which is taking this from here, this API tasks, which is defined here, tasks is the Mongo collection tasks. This is kind of how this is all linking up right now. And we could do, we can just add something here. Winch, lunch. So you do that here, and if you wanted to, you could go into here, into your Mongo instance, and actually like see it. It's sitting in there waiting for it because of that WebSocket synchronization. Alrighty. So what we can do here, we can just show how sorting works. So right now, your to-do list is in reverse order, which isn't a very good to-do list. You might want like your most recently put in item first. So you just go down here, create container, and instead of just doing a raw fetch, we're going to do a find, but with a condition that we're going to sort based on created at, as in not ascending but descending, whatever that -1 signifies. It flips your ascending descending argument basically, and then fetch based on that. So you can see our most recent stuff is at the top right now, and then we're just going to pretty this up a little bit, and then we're going to deploy. So what we're going to do now is in tasks, we're just going to, because remember, each one of these is coming from task. This is a task like element. So what we want to do now is put like a checkbox and a delete button. That's it. Like really simple. So we're going to import. So we need to have some concept of tasks from the database, and the only reason we need this right now is because we're going to now change state of stuff in the database. We're going to be checking stuff off. So now the database needs to be aware of, is this thing checked or not? And are we deleting it or removing it from the database? So now we need to have some sort of communication to the database. So that's why we're importing this. So let's just change what render does. So render is going to be a lot more involved now. The spacing's all jacked up, but I don't care. So basically what we're doing now is we have lists. We have a class name, which is used for your CSS and everything. We now are putting a button in there, which is called delete, and it's going to call this.delete this task, which we have not defined yet. We also are going to have a toggle checked function, which is not done yet either. And then we have our span, which is just our text of task.text, basically what the text, the title is. So let's define those very simple functions above render. Doesn't really matter where you put this, but did I lose my render definition? I did. Okay. So let's just put this above render. Okay. Do we have? So Meteor is restarting. So you can see we have our checkboxes now, which because of the CSS and the class names, we have like different kind of look and feel for when stuff that's checked off, and then we can delete stuff as well. So very easy, very cool. All right, so that's basically the extent of the app I want to make right now. We can go a lot deeper into this, of course, but now I kind of want to showcase how easy it is to run on mobile and how easy it is to deploy to Heroku. What Meteor leverages is DigitalOcean, which is this here. And because we are developers, we have no interest in paying any money for any of this crap. So we're going to use Heroku, which is free. And we're going to do a little couple hacks in Heroku to make it usable for Meteor. Because usually Heroku is used for Node apps, Mongo apps, Rails apps. It doesn't really have any specific build, configuration for Meteor apps. But what you can do is start a Dino instance, which is basically a Linux instance, and we can basically install Meteor onto that Linux instance and use it. So DigitalOcean, no thank you. I do not want to pay $5 a month for a sandbox. When you get cheaper, you can call me. But until then, I'll see you later.
That's only if you run it the entire month and don't shut it off.
Yeah, they do charge hourly, but even 7 cents, no. Sorry. No thanks. I don't feel like putting in my credit card for 7 cents. All right, so.
You use Vagrant, just do the same thing locally.
Well, we got it local. So let's get out of Mongo here. So all we have to do to put it on a device is just run, and same thing for Android. It's just basically replacing anywhere you see iOS with the word Android. But running Android on Mac is a tedious task, same as running iPhone on PC or Linux. So we're just going to use iPhone for simplicity here. Install SDK iOS. What the hell? Oh, it's already installed. I was about to say, what the hell? So just add platform, and you would do this for iOS and Android. You just go boom. It does its magic in the background. It's communicating with Cordova using some frameworks. Done. So we could do Meteor run iOS -device. And this is going to run on my device. So what this is going to do is it's going to actually, this is actually going to, I need to kill this before I do that. It doesn't like doing 2 instances, so we have to do that first. So what this is going to do is going to open a Cordova project in Xcode. So this is where the iOS guys are going to finally see something they're familiar with, even though all the Cordova crap inside Xcode will be nothing like Swift or anything you've seen before. So welcome back to not knowing anything. So we have this lunch to do, and I'll kind of just show you guys what some of this looks like in here. You have your classes, and this is all like Cordova, Meteor generated stuff. Just one little view here, which is your app. And then obviously you have your simulators or anywhere you want to run it. So we will just run this really fast on the phone. Hopefully this builds relatively quickly. Probably might take a minute. But while that's going on, basically this is what all it takes to run and deploy an app, because now you have a full Xcode project, and from here, anyone who's an iOS developer can take this forward and publish it to an app store or deploy it somewhere. You basically have everything you need. Of course, it's asking me to update my software. No. And you have your to-do list right here with the same Mongo DB stuff. It's not sitting in a cloud. It's still using this local host. But this is basically listening to that local host. If I delete something here and I relaunch it over here, you'll see the delete happen. The only reason this isn't in sync right now is because I can only have one local host running. Yeah, so I deleted it here, and it's in sync up there as well. So this is that like hot reload to all of your users. So we can do like hello, and boom, pops up there as well. So pretty cool. That's not so easy to do when you're doing your own mean stack or something else. So this is one of the cool things that Meteor just gives you right out of the bat. Okay, so we're deploying to phone. We've seen that. We've seen how that works. We can deploy to Android just as easily. So let's do what really counts, and let's get it out there in the wild. So first, let's put this on Git, because Heroku needs this to be on Git. So I'll stop coming over here. So let's add a new repository. I like to do this I like to do all my Git stuff in UI instead of on command line, just for sanity checks. what do we call this again? Oh, Meteor tutorials, lunch to do. Also create a remote. This is not private. Okay, so let's open this up. Initial commit, which is usually everyone's first comment. All right, so now we're up on GitHub. That's not impressive. I think everyone in here can do that part. But the impressive part is going to be getting this set up on Heroku now. So let me pull this up here. So to do this, you need to install the Heroku tool belt, which is available online. Very easy to get. Once you have the Heroku tool belt, you basically have the power to create Heroku Git repositories and push to that. So that's kind of how Heroku works. It like gives you your own Git repository and you push stuff to it in multitude of different ways. You can either tell it to hot deploy, which is a pretty cool thing. And I'll kind of show you what Heroku's thing looks like here. And what you can do under deploy, okay, what the hell are you doing? And what you can do under deploy is you can tell it to deploy a multitude of different ways. So we're going to use Heroku tool belt, and the reason for that is so we can actually set up our dyno instance with the customizability we need for Meteor. But what I like to do for Rails apps and actual Node apps is just connect it right to GitHub. So whenever you commit something to master or commit something to dev on your own GitHub, it just automatically continuously deploys to your Heroku instance without having to do any of this extra Git committing to Heroku's specific branch. But to start it, we're going to use it for now. So we're not going to use this. And you can also use Dropbox, which is weird, but works.
Which is weird, but works.
Okay, so we're going to do just a Heroku create, and it's lunch to do. So this is created now. We'll kind of go to our personal apps here. We can kind of see it. It's ready to go. It knows about it. And now what we're going to do is use a custom build pack. Usually a build pack you would use is a Heroku default one, which is like a Mongo build pack or a Node build pack or a Rails build pack. So we're going to use our own, which is something somebody made named Michael Takak, and he made a Meteor build pack course, which basically is a dyno instance and does a whole bunch of installations and makes it easy for you. Okay, cool. To use a Meteor app, much like Brad's parse app, you need MongoLab. So we will throw MongoLab on Heroku. Cool.
Also forget to 500 megs, I think.
Yep, so Mongo Labs does give you sandbox, which is nice. Optional step, oh yes. So now we need to set the root here. Basically, this is telling Meteor, or what's lunch to do. It's basically telling Meteor what to launch when it starts. And now we just do a git push Heroku, the remote Heroku branch master. And what this is going to do, you're going to see it's downloading Meteor. This is all stuff coming from the remote right now, the Linux instance. It's basically going to install Meteor, download it, install npm Mongo, everything that it needs to run as like an actual server somewhere. So basically everything we did locally, it's going to do on the remote right now. It's getting all of those packages, building Meteor with that root URL we just basically told it. And it's telling me I can only build iOS apps on an OS X system. Thank you for that. I'm aware. And in hopefully a few moments, this will be on the cloud, ready to use by anybody, so we can all go in there and add tasks to this exciting to-do list app, which is going to take over Snapchat or Bitmoji or whatever we're trying to kill nowadays.
Same thing. Snapchat on something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they bought them out. So, any questions while this is going on? Any at all? So, kind of what I want to showcase today is how quick you can get a prototype up and running, just being a web developer. So, you know, we have a lot of web developers in here that might not be adept at writing Swift or Java apps on Android, Swift apps on iOS. And this is showing that you can at least do, you know, it's not the greatest thing to have like this hybrid Cordova mobile app. Like if you have a very rich app, probably like our Storybots app would not run well in Cordova, I don't think, especially with like Spine and all the OpenGL we have. And maybe a big app such as like the Facebook app. But, you know, for doing quick prototypes, presenting to funders or something, or seeing if your idea even holds water, this is perfect for you. This is like absolutely perfect. So let's go in here. Let's go in our to-do app. Let's open the app. And there's our app. So this is in the cloud right now. So this is like the cloud Mongo instance. So Mongo on the cloud has no data in it. Or it looks like someone already added stuff. Because I didn't do that. Hi, stranger. So you know, this is kind of, we basically are turning this into a chatter app now, but cool. So you can kind of see how this is hot reloading everywhere, all over the place, on mobile, wherever the hell it is. Just kind of want to showcase the power of using something like Meteor to get prototypes up and running in a semi-respectable, you know, way of presenting stuff. So if you had like really nice CSS, you could make like a pretty cool chatter app in like probably under an hour. That was actually like really usable, and you could get some real live feedback. Like, is this good? Does it suck? Instead of putting this all together in a Rails application or like a mean stack application, and it could take you days, maybe even months to get you this same functionality and look and feel and user experience. So that's basically all we did here today. And I wanted to also showcase that doing a presentation like this does not take 20 hours. I did this in 3. Doesn't take you to be an expert. I know like next to nothing about JavaScript. As you see, I blew over like a lot of those details. Just kind of copy and pasted shit into a text editor, and you kind of all just shook your head and like, cool, I get that, I get that. That's all it takes. Like just something you're passionate about, show something cool, something usable, and that's all this Lunch and Learn stuff is about. Like I'm sure you all learned something at least new today. So this is another tool you put in your tool belt to, you know, build some cool apps. Some prototypes, show your friends some ideas, and that's all I got for you. So thanks for coming.
It'd be cool to see some of the JavaScript skilled people in here maybe take this app and put in some like navigation or you know, multiple pages or some other Angular reactive.
Yeah, and it
some reactive stuff in there. Or something.
supports Angular, so if you're an Angular expert, Meteor's ready for you. The only thing is, the reason I chose React, and I kind of blew past this earlier, is Angular is moving from like 1.3 to 2.0, and apparently very little backwards compatibility is being supported right now. So a lot of new developers coming in and developers kind of building new apps today are avoiding Angular 2.0 just because it's so new, very little support for it, and they don't want to build on Angular 1.3 because that's going to be obsolete in a few months in favor of Angular 2. But I think the web agrees that Angular 2 is going to kick some serious ass once it's done. but it's not done. And there's like this little gap in time of like old Angular to new Angular. So people are kind of lost, like what should I do? So a lot of people are moving to React, and React's kind of taking more and more people. So is Ember. Ember's taking people too. And Angular's just losing a little bit of steam. I honestly think they'll get it all back once 2.0 is out and all of their features are up and running. But I think Angular 1.3 was falling a little bit behind the curve in terms of like deploying to mobile, supporting mobile, a lot of the front end stuff that React and Bootstrap and stuff can do for you. But I think Angular 2 is going to give you all of those tools that you need. So we'll wait and see. I don't know.
You trying to use React Native with this?
I have not.
You know if that's possible?
I don't know. I don't know if it is due to like the Cordova framework that it gives you. So I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think so at the moment, but something to explore.
It shouldn't conflict with Cordova. One thing I was thinking that might conflict with it is like the stuff that Meteor, the React stuff that Meteor uses to do its like kind of low level stuff here.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how React works with React Native, or if it's just like a substitution, or if it's that's a big thing I would think about.
Probably like that in-browser cache database would need some tweaking to get React Native to play nice with.
I watched that video last week where it mentioned something about how like if you're using React Native, this might be different if you're used to React.
Yeah.
So like they're kind of different.
But if you guys aren't familiar with React Native, it's basically a way to write apps for Android and iOS in basically React JavaScript, and it leverages actual native stuff on iOS and Android instead of Cordova, which I think is using more or less like a web view and kind of displaying like actual HTML in a web view. So if you've used Storybot's app, like the terms of service and the privacy policy, it's like a web view. So I think I'm pretty sure that's what Cordova is doing, where React Native will actually say like, use this Swift object, use auto layout, you build this scene with all of these iOS native stuff, so it should be more reactive. But these Cordova apps are getting better and better each iteration, so they're closing that gap of like React versus non-React, native versus non-native applications. So the gap is getting closer and closer to being one and the same, but I think it still has a long way to go for like real, true, complicated. Like I don't know if you can make like Clash of Clans or like a full game in Cordova, for example, and port it to Android and iOS. But maybe React Native, who knows?
When the gap always exists though, because like iOS or the capabilities will keep on getting more sophisticated, and then there'll always just be a catch up with.
I think so. What do you think, Brad? I think there will always be a gap.
Like as the capabilities of like creating natively like on iOS's new stuff is released. Like
I think React Native is going down that's pretty cool path that no other frameworks have gone down before. They're not trying to rebuild the frameworks, they're actually leveraging the frameworks that are already there. That's something that people have been kind of saying away from for a reason. So maybe stuff like that, or maybe the next thing after that, or maybe integrations or get built, or I can see the gap progressively getting smaller, but to your point, probably would be one cross-platform solution.
Just like it's kind of like the Meteor thing here. Like someone picking this up would be like, "Oh, isn't this not the same as doing mean all these configurations?" And it's not as good. It's definitely not as good, but it's really good for prototyping, which is kind of what the Cordova. That's how I would use Cordova or PhoneGap. Is like I want to get a prototype out quick. I want to see how Android likes it and iOS likes it, and I don't really care about performance. I'm not going to build a super sophisticated app. If this idea takes off and the most like the MVP form of it, like the minimum viable product, when it's time to iterate again, then I'm going to hire. I now have money to hire 6 developers to make it native, for example. That's how I view like a Meteor PhoneGap tools. Is I'm not going to build the next Facebook on this in the way Facebook exists now, but I'm going to build maybe Twitter on it, like Twitter's first iteration, which is just like 155 character status updates. That would probably run really well on Meteor. when I have 1 million users on that, it might start slowing down. I don't know. I've never had a 1 million user app on Meteor before. But when I'm there, I guarantee you I can go to funders now and get some money and basically buy myself out of the problem.
You just need a bigger plan with MongoDB and Heroku, right?
Yeah, bigger plan. I don't know how Meteor.
Millions of users.
I just don't know how Meteor scales with all those DDP WebSockets. Like, if it has like 1 million WebSockets open, it's like all doing hot reload times 1 million. I don't know how well it scales, if it even can. But there are good apps being built on Meteor, so it has potential. It is being used. $20 million investment from some funder or VC somewhere. So it's not just some like JavaScript stack of the month, like a lot of them are coming out. It looks like it's going to be here to stay for at least another year or so. We'll see what happens after that. If it keeps getting adopted by new developers, or people are kind of staying away from it in favor of like a mean stack, or maybe Rails comes back out of nowhere and Rails takes over again, like it did way in the past. Who knows? But you know, from my point of view, being not a new web developer, but a new JavaScript developer, what do I build my app in? This is kind of what I learned. Is if you want to go to prototype as soon as you possibly can, Meteor might be a good stack for you. So, thank you guys. Had fun. Yeah, it's cool when you don't know shit about it too. Say, oh, look at all this stuff I can do.
I had no idea what Meteor was. I thought it was just like another like one of those or whatever. It's like, oh,
It's funny, the open source parser just also adopted LiveQuery last week. Just merged it in. So it's funny.